sometimes you also outgrow a provider. Like
Yeah,
they were
yeah,
really great at first, and when it's not great anymore, it doesn't mean that like you got really far with this provider. You're better than you were
yes,
6 months ago, and then they did what they could, and that was your time together.
yeah.
And if that's the case and you've plateaued, you can go on to another provider. Welcome to today's episode of The Medical Disruptor, the show where we challenge outdated medical norms and redefine what true wellness looks like. I'm bringing you the innovators, the boundary breakers, and the trailblazers who refuse to accept the status quo. These disruptors are revolutionizing the way we approach wellness. And this episode, we've talked about topics I've never talked about before. I've learned about parasites, I've learned about full moon cleanses, I've learned about muscle testing. Never did any of this in any of our shows before. This week's guest, Dr. Kate Masterson, is a chiropractor and kinesiologist, originally from Massachusetts. She looks at the body as a whole, helps you identify if it's a structural issue or a chemical issue or an emotional issue so that you kind of know what to do first. I can't wait to share everything I've learned on this episode with you. Let's dive in. Dr. Kate, I'm so excited that you're here.
I know. I'm so excited to be here.
Amazing. So, this is called Medical Disruptor. And I try to introduce our audience to all of the crazy medical disruptors in the country so that they know that they are not crazy because we are all
Yeah.
here to serve them. So tell us a little bit about your training and how you got into Crazy Town.
Yes, I love Crazy Town. Happy to be here. And I love that you do this podcast because getting the information out there is half the battle. So, my journey, I've always been into alternative medicine, alternative practices. I grew up going to a chiropractor who did muscle testing. So, I've always been in that realm. Now, when I went to college, I got my biology degree. And then when I went to chiropractic school, this is when I really started to understand all the different modalities and all of the different emotional work, muscle testing, all that good stuff. So, when I was in chiropractic school, I got introduced to a technique called CPK, which combines a lot of different techniques, but it is utilizing muscle testing. And when I was in that world, I really got to understand all of the different types of infections that my body was dealing with that I had no idea. So I was, seeing alternative practitioners, but it really wasn't until I started dealing with infections like parasites and mold, bacteria, that I really started to see some progress in my health. And in school, when I was doing CPK, at the end of chiropractic school, you get to do an internship and you can do it for 3 months, you can do it for 6 months. And this is when I got introduced to Dr. Katrina Runkles and Dr. Jabin Moore. So I went out to Kansas City, they're both located there. And I was able to do my internship, and I ended up working actually at both of their clinics. And this is where I really start to understand testing, further my education, and I really started to fall in love with finding that root cause for people.
Oh, so I'm not familiar with those two docs. What are they known for?
Great. So they're in the CPK space, so in that muscle testing space. Dr. Jabin Moore, he does a lot of work with a lot of different people. So he works a lot with mold, he works a lot with pandas.
Mm,
He does a lot of parasite work. He does a lot of testing. So at his clinic, and I still work there part time, at his clinic, we do a lot of OAT tests, we do total tox, hormone testing, HTMAs, blood work. So we offer a lot of different resources for people to understand what's going on. And then Dr. Katrina, she does a lot of structure work. So we are chiropractors at the end of the day. So we're doing structure work. She does a lot of emotional work. We do a technique called NET, which is neuroemotional technique. She's amazing at that. And then she also does chemical work with, making sure people are on the right supplements and things like that.
so why do you think chiros are more, there is a greater affinity for them to do like functional medicine and just kind of holistic things? Why do you think that is?
Yeah, that's actually a really good question because now that you mention it, like I have a couple of friends in MD school, and they're not necessarily into the same stuff that we are. I think it's because chiropractors have always been looking for alternative ways to heal, right? Chiropractic is based off of trying to heal the body without surgery and medication. So we have this innate belief that the body has this ability to heal. And so we've always strived for looking at different resources to help support the body,
Mm.
whether it is an adjustment or emotional work or, finding natural herbal supplements to help support the immune system. So we've always kind of been away from surgery and medication. We've always had that kind of root cause approach from the beginning.
I see. I love that so much because so many of my chiro colleagues are also alternative. Like some of them are stay chiro and adjusting, but
Mhm.
then they have like when they expand their knowledge, they're more into alternative. So one of the things we really haven't touched on my podcast at all because it's not my area of expertise, and for some reason we haven't had any other disruptors talk about is parasites.
Mhm.
So we're gonna do like we need to go like Parasite 101. We've never talked
Yeah.
about it. So I guess my first question is, I mean, our microbiome is full of things, including parasites,
Yeah.
and not all parasites are necessarily bad, I imagine. So
Correct.
first walk us through like the landscape of like what's living in us and what's okay to live in us.
Yeah, and I think that this actually brings up a really good point and something that I have definitely learned along the way is that when you're doing functional medicine, when you're taking all these supplements, it is not about destroying everything and getting rid of every single thing, right? Your microbiome is made up of lots of different things, parasites, viruses, bacteria, right? Like this is about creating a really good terrain. So you want to get your terrain strong enough so that you can engage with viruses, you can engage with parasites, and your body, your immune system is able to handle that on its own. Unfortunately, we live in a very toxic world, right? We are drinking toxic water. Our food is filled with pesticides, chemicals, and dyes. We have a lot of emotional trauma, EMFs, right? So, right off the bat, we are already burdened when it comes to our terrain. So, when I'm working with someone and I'm talking about parasites, typically the way that I look at it is hey, let's lower the toxic load a little bit, right? Let's clear some parasites out. Let's work on some heavy metals, whatever else they got going on and making sure that we are rebuilding that terrain. Because again, you're not going to be able to be perfect. The goal is not to be this clean surface because we're not meant to be that way. But you want to just get your body strong enough so that it can engage and it can get back to that homeostatic point.
But how do you know, like, for example, in the world of the microbiome in terms of bacteria, we could do a stool test and we know that there's some pathogenic and there's some commensal bacteria. And it's okay to have some pathogenic. We don't have to your point, eradicate all of them, but it has to be a balance. How do you know? Is that the same way? Do you test for
Yeah,
parasites?
so
Are there some parasites you're like, no, these are okay to have?
good question. So, with parasite testing, it's not going to be great. So, I typically do not do stool sample testing when it comes to parasites. They almost never come back with them being positive. Muscle testing is a great way to see if there is any imbalance going on. There also are blood markers that you can look at. So a big one is going to be eosinophils. So this would be on a CBC with differential. So the differential part is going to look at your 5 types of white blood cells. And if those eosinophils are above a 3, I'm thinking parasites. If you have monocytes above a 7, I'm thinking parasites, just because they are so common and parasites harbor a lot of other infections and toxins, which is why addressing them first can be helpful. So I definitely look at blood. I also look at symptoms, which we can get into, as well as muscle testing, right? So seeing that imbalance, because that type of testing I find is extremely accurate versus a stool test I don't really
Yeah.
use.
That makes sense because stool testing, even anytime we do for ovum parasites, is you need more than one, and you have to be really quite
Yeah.
abundant to be there. Before we get into the symptoms, eosinophils are also used to determine someone has allergies. So how do you differentiate if it's allergies versus parasite?
Good question. I typically look at symptoms, right? So with allergies, you can look at all those histamine responses. But the thing with parasites is that in your immune system, there is something called the Th1 pathway and the Th2 pathway. There are obviously lots of different pathways in the immune system, but these are two major ones. And in your Th2 pathway is going to live that allergy response, but it's also going to be parasites. So I often find that the more allergies you have, that could be a parasitic response because if you have parasites, it's going to raise that Th2 pathway. You're going to be more reactive to foods, your environments, things like that. I'm also considering mycotoxins when that gets presented. But to kind of answer your question, I'm definitely looking at symptoms to help kind of differentiate what's going on.
Okay, so what does the classic patient look like symptomatically?
Yeah, so symptomatically, I definitely look at their digestion. So the with parasites, you definitely can have a wide range of digestive issues. A lot of times the bigger ones will cause some more constipation. Some of the smaller ones like protozoas can cause more diarrhea. We see more fungal with diarrhea and things like that. I'm also looking at skin, right? So if they have a lot of acne, or anything like that, eczema, those are also, definitely looking for some parasites there. And then how are you responding around the full moon? Do you feel like things flare around the full moon? Are you more moody? Do you get more headaches? Because during the full moon, we actually are going to create we're going to have more serotonin in the body and less melatonin, and parasites have a ton of serotonin receptors, and so therefore they're a little bit more active, and you can have a flare in there. A lot of like anal itching or anything like that, that can also indicate parasites as well. So I'm looking at digestion, looking at skin, looking for how you're responding around the full moon.
Interesting. So you see all this, and then you see the eosinophils. Would you ever consider parasites if the eosinophils are normal?
Yeah, right. So sometimes when people come in, right, they have all of these symptoms going on. Look at their blood work. It's perfect, right? It is textbook. And so what I tell people is that your immune system may not even recognize what's going on, right? If you have a burglar in the house and you can't see them, you don't hear them, you're not going to do anything, right? So if your immune system doesn't understand that there's invaders, that there's pathogens, why would they wouldn't raise a response, right? So
Mm.
sometimes you need to get the immune system to wake up a little bit to see that to see those rise a little bit. So I'm always thinking blood work or any type of test, all that's really measuring is what your body can produce at that time. If your body can't produce any type of immune response, if it can't detox anything, it's not going to come out in urine, it's not going to come out in stool, and your blood may look fine. So again, muscle testing combining with the history, with the symptoms, with the testing is really how you want to look at a patient, right? Because a patient is way more than just blood work or a note test or whatever it may be.
Do you have times where somebody looks like that and then you do muscle testing and it's not it?
Like where their blood work looks fine and then I do muscle
No, the
testing.
blood, maybe they have the symptoms, they kind of, you're like, oh, this is what I think. And then you do the muscle testing and it's negative.
Oh yeah. Well, I will do so with the technique that I do, what we're asking is basically your body's priority. Like what is the main thing that is going on? Is it a structural issue? Is it a chemical issue? Or is it an emotional issue? And a lot of times when I'm treating people, I'll be like, oh, I know it's parasites, or oh, I know it's bacteria, or whatever. And it's like emotions, or it's like, hey, their atlas is out or something like that, right? And so I just tell people that anything can cause anything. To your point of like people think we're crazy, anything in the body can be created from anything. And so when people get dismissed, I'm like, no, how you're feeling is very real. We just need to figure out why you're feeling that way. And it may be something as simple as, oh, my ileocecal valve, which is connects my small intestine to my large intestine, was out. Or no, I had my grandparent pass away 2 months ago and my digestion's been off ever since because I'm holding on to those emotions. So I'm always looking at a chemical, a structural, or emotional issue and what could be contributing that. So yeah, I find muscle testing, making me, humble myself all the time.
Yeah. And the truth is, right, like they could still have the parasites. Like you could have many things going on. I tell my patients all the time, like, you can have Lyme and mold and parasites and this and this and this, but it's really about what is the thing that's we have to address first. Right.
Exactly.
So
Right.
with your testing, like for me, I don't do muscle testing. For me, like we can't even address the other things if your nutrition's off. We can't address certain things if you are still in a really like unstable, stressful relationship. Like
Hmm.
there's no supplement in the world that's going to fix that. So really kind of going layer by layer. So that muscle test is almost a bit of a shortcut where you're like, body, you're like, let me know what should we tackle first.
Yeah.
That's great. And so they may have all three. They may have structural and emotional and parasites, but right now you can clear all the parasites and then they might still feel unwell if the main thing that they're dealing with is emotional or structural. I love that. And that's really
Yeah.
important because I think sometimes people get really stuck on what is the one thing. It's not usually one
Hmm.
thing. And then people really get stuck on testing. When I
Hmm.
first started out, I did a lot of testing. I don't really like to do a lot of testing because if you're coming to me, I'm probably going to find the positive on something.
Yeah. Yeah.
By the time you've found me, you've already been through the whole like circus. So if you're coming to me, I'm going to find a positive. That doesn't mean it's the first thing we need to solve for.
Hmm.
And like, just like you said, like some people who are mold, like I cannot begin to detox you on mold if we're still like drinking martinis, right? Like there's just so much,
Right.
there's so many levels to this. So I like that so much. Okay, so parasites. So let's just assume they look like a parasite, the positive is interfilled, your
Yeah.
muscle testing is positive. This is a classic case. What do you do?
Perfect. So what, and I also back to your point, going back to like the basics, right? Like we need to make sure that's solid, right? Because again, if you're having X, Y, and Z, your sleep is off, or you're staying up super late, your nutrition's off, right? Like you are just going to be going in circles. So the next thing that I do, right, considering all that foundational stuff is good, is I look at what herbal supplements are going to support your immune system and helping you detox, right? This isn't like kill, kill, kill. It's how are we going to support the body? We're just aiding the body in what it's naturally meant to do. So I look at what supplements to use. So some of my top ones, I use a lot of Cellcore and I use a lot of Supreme Nutrition. I think they have great products. Supreme Nutrition, a lot of theirs is just going to be single herb. The Cellcore ones, a lot of them are going to be multi-herb. So really depends on what is going to work for that person. And I always tell someone this herb might work for one person, but it might be awful for you. Doesn't mean anything's wrong with you. It just means, hey, I don't like beets. This person does like beets. Nothing wrong. It's just
Right.
what works with your biochemistry. So then we muscle test to figure out, hey, what exact herb do I need or multiple herbs to help support that? It also doesn't necessarily need to be an anti-parasitic herb, right? It could be, hey, my lymphatic system just needs some support and that way I can move stuff through. I'm B1 deficient. I have that in me. My immune system can work like that. I can move stuff through. So it's not always like a classic, para 1, para 2, para 3, or some other herbs like Malia or Morinda or Mimosa, right? It could be something basic that you're missing with your drainage pathways that once you open those up, then you're good to go.
So then how long do you treat for?
It really depends. So some people I'll typically test for how many weeks they need to be on a specific herb.
Hmm.
I would say for most people, I'm testing anywhere from 3 to 5 weeks, and then we kind of readjust. We'll change up the herbs. We'll see if they're still testing for that. And a lot of people also talk about full moon cleanses, right? So full moon cleanses are going to be anywhere from 3 to 7 days around the full moon at pretty high dosages. That can definitely be great. I don't necessarily start people out on that. I will usually do is a longer protocol, right? So 4 weeks, 5 weeks of a smaller dosage and see where you're kind of testing at that point. So typically how we work is we check in once a month, see what herbs are testing, see what we need to switch up and go from there. And then again, right, parasites could be totally fine. And then we need to move on to bacteria or heavy metals or, the body's an onion, right? There's always that next level that we can optimize.
So I gotta tell you, like I know I'm feeling this. I know some of my audience is feeling this. Like this concept of full moon feels so out there for me. Like
Mhm.
no one's ever said this before, and my brain's going, "What the frick is this lady talking about with the full moon?"
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
can you please teach me and convince me so that every time you say full moon, I'm like, "What is she saying?" Tell
Yeah.
me. I've never heard this before. Tell me.
Like a full moon cleanse or
Oh,
just
what the
why the
heck
full
does full
moon?
moon have to do with health? Like I've been doing this forever, and I'm like, full. What is you're saying it like yeah, and then you put your sweatshirt on, and I'm like, what is this lady talking
Yeah.
about? So like it's like so obvious for you, but I I've been in this world for a long time, and I've not heard this. So like, walk me through this piece, please.
Yes. So during the full moon, right, it is brighter out. So we are making less melatonin, we're making more serotonin, right? So there's an increase in serotonin, which is going to be a neurotransmitter. This
So
is
hold on,
how
time
we,
out, time out, time out.
yes.
Okay, does that mean I have to see it? I have to see the moon because it's you're talking about brighter and not brighter. So does that mean my eyes have to see it?
So with the moon, I'm not exactly sure in terms of that. I mean, we typically do see the moon at least some point throughout the day. But if you think about it, right, like the moon can control the tides, right? It has an impact on the tides. Body's 70% water, right? So there is going to be some impact around that.
Hmm.
So so during the full moon, you don't necessarily need to sit out and watch the moon, right? Lots of people don't do that and they still feel really big effects around the full moon or oh my gosh, I feel off around the full moon. So I'm not exactly sure like the in-depth like physics of it, but I
Okay.
do know that during that time there is a switch in engaging into more serotonin being created. And so during that, if we have more serotonin, again, this is going to be a neurotransmitter. It helps how we feel. A lot of that is made in the gut. And so our parasites, they have a lot of serotonin receptors. So they're getting some more fuel. So they can become a little bit more active. You can have more symptoms, things like that. So during the full moon, a lot of people will do full moon cleanses because the parasite's a little bit more active. They're a little bit easier to clear out during that time, which is why people can do full moon parasite cleanses.
Wow. Okay, this is so So interesting. Like as you're talking, I had to look this up because
Yeah.
like this is new for me and I have to like make sure. Yeah. So this is just brand new for me. There are some, you're right, obviously they call it speculative. Everything we do is speculative.
Yeah.
Some speculative ideas of how the moon affects the body. It's not just that, right? Mood swings, anxiety, restlessness, more
Hmm.
vivid dreams, feelings of being off. So interesting, the effect of it, right? And you know, as much as it's new for me, I without question know that the sun affects so much. Without question, I know it
Right.
releases certain things and affects our circadian rhythm, which is why this week I've been so off because of daylight savings time. This has been like a
Yeah.
horrible week for
Yep.
me. So then why wouldn't the moon affect? So that's very, very interesting. So anyone who's listening, if it's hitting you the way it's hitting me, let's just roll up our sleeves and do some research into this because we kind of like all bought into the fact that the sun definitely affects us, but why wouldn't the moon affect us? So very, very
Hmm.
interesting. Love this. Okay, so we do this. Maybe tell us a little bit about muscle testing. Like that's also something we have not explored on this podcast.
Yeah, so muscle testing is a great technique. Again, what you're doing is you're asking the body, does this resonate with me? Does this not resonate with me? And muscle testing is not about strength. It is not about, oh my gosh, I'm stronger than you, so this muscle test is always going to be strong,
What does it
right?
look like? Anyone who's listening and not maybe watching, can you walk us through what it looks like?
Yes. So typically for a muscle test, if you're looking for nutrition, the patient will be laying down and you will raise up one arm and you will try and push that down. And what you're looking for is a quote unquote lock. So you're looking for not to overpower the person, but just okay, I know that muscle's working. I know that it's feeling engaged. So that would be a strong muscle test. You can muscle test any muscle in the body, right? Your quads, your hamstrings, calves, all of the shoulder muscles, your core. You can muscle test all of those. If you are a student or anything like that and you're interested, go to a Applied Kinesiology Club. They will teach you all of this. Do the AK 100-hour course. They're great. But what it's looking for is for that muscle to have integrity. So for it to work properly, right? So that's what you're trying to find. Then once you find that strong muscle, you are going to ask the stressor, right? Is it a chemical issue? Is it an emotional issue? Is it a physical issue? So once you find, okay, say I'm muscle testing, right? I'm going through, my kits. So you can have testing kits, which have little vials, and in those vials are going to have certain frequencies. So, frequencies, this is just energy, right? We are energetic beings. Everything is going to have a different energy. So, these little vials are labeled different things, and you can go through the muscle test, right? So, you're testing every vial or however that practitioner does it. And maybe your arm goes weak on a certain frequency, right? So, you hit something and it shuts the muscle off. Basically, what's happening is as soon as you touch that ball, you put that stressor on your system, the brain gets really confused because it's almost like short circuiting you and the muscle will go weak. So it's just a short stressor to say, hey, my body doesn't really know how to integrate that frequency. It feels off. It feels weird. It's like if you were eating, food and say you really didn't like pickles, right? You're going through your meal, you had your rice, you had your steak, you had your broccoli, you get to the pickles and you're like, oh gosh, like that does
Gross.
not
Yeah.
taste good, right? Like you kind of almost like are like, oh, why did I have that? Same thing with muscle testing. You're good, you're good, you're good. Nope, that goes weak. Okay, why did it go weak? Why do we have an issue with this certain parasite or bacteria? Oh, my body needs, support in a certain way. So that's kind of how muscle testing works. There's lots of different techniques with muscle testing. You can kind of go down a whole rabbit hole with that. So muscle testing has a lot of different practitioners and how they practice and what they practice. But basically, it's asking the body, hey, are you able to, does this feel good or does it not feel good? You're looking for a change.
And when you ask them about those questions, do you ask those questions aloud, the stress and the structure? Do you ask it out loud?
So with muscle testing, the technique that I do, we do hand moding. So hand moding, your hand can act like an antenna, and basically it sends off different frequencies. So you definitely can do, there is techniques that say, hey, is it structural? Is it chemical? Is it emotional? And you can muscle test that way. The technique that I do, we use hand moding. And so again, same thing, we're just asking the body, what is the top priority that we need to
How do you
work
ask
on?
it? That's really what I'm asking. How do you ask it?
So with the hand moaning, you can put your hand in different positions, right? And so this different position will change the frequency of what you are putting out into their field. And that way you are basically changing the frequency. That's how you're asking. So I use hand moaning. So you just put your hands in a different position over the patient. And then if they go weak, we know it's a chemical or a
Which
structural or
what
emotional issue.
show me what do you really so curious. What does it mean? Like how are you asking is it chemical, is it structural?
So you have different, so in CPK, you have different files. So there's a structural file, there's a chemical file, emotional, acupuncture, organ. And then within each file, there's different hand modes. So for structural, right, you can have bone, you can have muscle, ligament,
So
you
you're
know,
doing this with your hand
yep,
without touching the patient, or
you,
then you touch the patient with the other hand.
yep. And then you muscle test the patient.
Okay, and so the patient doesn't know what any of these mean.
No, no.
So you're not, that's what I was wondering, because you're not asking them because then might have like an influence. So in the moment though that you're doing it, you're thinking of the thing. You're thinking of it. And so that changes kind of your frequency and when you're touching their hand.
Yeah, like I know what all of the hand modes mean, right? And so I know if I put a bone hand mode up, that's going to indicate that I'm looking for a bone displacement. If I put up, a chemical file, I know that's going to indicate a chemical imbalance. So yeah, the frequency that I'm putting out is
Oh, that's
changing.
so cool.
Yeah.
Can you muscle test yourself?
You can, it's not advised because right there may be some level of unbiased. So like you can, I try and always have like my colleagues do it for me though, because I'm like, I don't know, I'm probably messing this up for myself. So it's better to have someone else do it for
Oh,
you.
that's so cool. And it doesn't, I imagine that if people are testing, it doesn't have to be in a vial. Like you just hold your soda can and just be like,
Yeah. Yep. Like I'll have people bring in like their self-care products, right? And we'll muscle test it, see if they're having any issues or anything with that. Different supplements that they've been taking, see if they have any issues with any of them. So yeah, you can muscle test,
anything.
all that stuff.
I think some people should muscle test their partners.
So yeah, yeah, if you want to get down a rabbit hole, you definitely can, or you can do, because so take yeast for example, right? If a female or a male is having like this constant yeast issue, I'm thinking, okay, is there mold in the house, or does your partner have the yeast that you guys are trading back and forth,
Wow.
So that's definitely one thing that you can take a look at is, hey, what does the partner's microbiome look like?
I was just more thinking, was his partner right for you? If
Yeah,
your arm's down, like you need to get a divorce.
yeah, right. Sorry. Yeah, I don't want to be involved in the lawsuit or anything, but you do need to get a
Just letting you
divorce.
know, why are you getting divorced? Well, my chiropractor told me
Yeah,
that he
yeah.
did not pass the muscle test. I feel like that could be used in the court of law. I feel like we should be able to.
Yeah, right. We could see if we could get some senators behind that.
Anything's possible.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's so interesting. Okay, what else should I ask you about? You do so many cool things that are kind of out of my scope. So tell me what else you do.
So definitely looking at structural, chemical, and emotional. Because again, right, I've had lots of people who have digestive issues and it's all emotional. And I was not one to really believe in emotional work.
I
I was the type of
know.
person where I was like,
Always,
I would rather take 100 pills
it
than
always
deal with.
comes later in the practice. Always.
Yes. Yeah, because I'm like, oh, I can fix it with just supplements, right? And like you said earlier, if you're in a toxic relationship or you have all this unprocessed emotions, emotions carry energy, right? We know what it's like to feel happy. We know what it's like to feel sad. Feels very different in the body because the energy is different. So that unprocessed emotion or that trauma, whatever that may be, that is going to change your physiology. And therefore, you can get physical symptoms. So I have lots of people where I'm like, hey, if you've been doing this for a while, you've been doing parasite cleansing forever, nothing's
Yes.
working.
Yes.
Look at emotions, right? Look at your partner, look at your nutrition, right? So emotions play such a big role. And I'm such an advocate for nervous system work because your nervous system and your immune system, they're going to feed off of each other. So
100%.
if your nervous system is all out of whack, I mean, that's where you really need to start.
And I think I say this in every podcast at this point, where because anyone that has kind of made the way to this podcast has been doing this for a little bit of time
Mhm.
for my team to have found you. And so we all had this evolution, right? When we first started, I was like, oh, I'm just going to change everyone's diet. It's going to be great.
Yeah.
I'm going to give them some supplements. It's going to be amazing. We'll fix the microbiome. Then you kind of discover mold, Lyme, and you're okay, some
Mm-mm.
parasites. And then you get these patients, right to your point, they're on this forever. They've been on one protocol after the other, and it's just not better. And then you realize it's all emotional and central nervous work. And now when I see some people, I'm like, we have to start there.
Yeah.
We have to start there first, because otherwise, like, what are we doing? Like, we're just not going to get better. Again, I don't have muscle testing, but I just recently spoke to someone, and as soon as I mentioned, and also this is something we have to look into, they just started crying, and I was like, well, I guess that's where we're starting.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
if you said that to me right now, I wouldn't cry, because I feel like I'm on solid ground. You know, I'm a great
Yeah.
partner, and I love my kids. Like, I'm in a solid ground there, spiritually, emotionally. Like, I'm on
Yeah.
solid ground. But you say that to someone who's not on solid ground, and they just like collapse. They're like, well, I'm not really worried about the mold right now. Like,
Yeah.
let's focus
And I,
on this.
Yeah. And I think what people also kind of get stuck on is like, oh, well, it wasn't that bad, or it wasn't that bad compared to this other person. Your nervous
Yes.
system doesn't care what
Oh,
happened to the person down the block, across the world. What your nervous system cares about is how you felt at that moment, right? So if you were
yes.
really, that 14-year-old you, that 7-year-old you, if you were really, stuck and you felt really scared or sad at that time, you don't really have coping mechanisms, when you're that young. So going back, processing that, giving the body time to really just feel and then let that go is huge.
Yeah. And I think a lot of high performers, and I think we tend to get high performers because they're constantly on the search to get better,
Hmm.
right? So you get these high performers, overachievers, they're on a search to get
Mm,
better, because some people have like acquiesced and maybe are just like not searching. So we tend to get this circle of people like, and so when you're that type of person, high performer, super achiever, you're always downplaying the trauma.
yeah.
It's not so
Yep.
bad. People have it worse, because that's kind of that's why you got to be this person.
Yeah.
Right? And so you really constantly in a suppression, denial,
Hmm.
and it's kind of creeping up. It's like trying to, like, I don't know, like wrap an onion in a plastic bag and expecting it not to smell. It's going to smell. It's
Yeah.
going to
Oh,
come out.
absolutely. Absolutely. I had this girl, and she's in med school, super high performer, perfectionist, right? She came to me for digestion, and we're doing these things. We're working on, cleaning up her gut a little bit, and I'm adjusting her hips, so making sure all that's good. And at the end of the session, I'm like, hey, like there's like a lot of emotional stuff here. Like, do you want to check it out? She was like, sure. All this stuff came pouring out. She's crying on the table, just all this suppression. And I'm like, your gut, right? This constipation is not going to get better until you really like address that. And it's again, the emotional work is not going to happen overnight. I think that's the frustrating part, because
Yeah.
in our day and age, right, we're looking for that instant gratification. I need to be fixed now. And it's a long process. Same with healing alternatively, right? Like it can take some time, and there's a lot of emotions in chronic healing. Or sorry, healing chronic illness, right? It's
Yeah.
it's frustrating, it's not linear, it's a lot. So, I mean, it's a really big part of that.
It's a really big part of it. And I'm glad that we talk about it every podcast, because I didn't believe it for the longest time, right? You push through,
Hmm.
you're strong, you push through. Give me the supplements.
Yeah.
Like you said,
Yeah, like I'll take 100, I don't care.
take 100. We don't have to go down this road of emotions. I'm fine. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so really, if you're listening to this and you're doing all the work and you haven't done the emotional piece, please do the emotional piece. However it is, I use like a vagal nerve stimulator,
Great.
Truvega, I think it's called,
Mhm.
which I think is wonderful. Do you have any kind of techniques that you give to your patients?
So what I do for like emotional work is I suggest Primal Trust. So Primal Trust is going to be an online website. It's Dr. King's work. It's kind of self-motivated in the sense that you can kind of go at whatever pace you feel comfortable with, but she gives a ton of information on the nervous system, tips and tricks, and then really like how to release the trauma. And it's a really great program. That one I think financially can make the most sense to people. Obviously, when you're on your journey, you've spent thousands and
So
thousands
much
of
money.
dollars.
Yeah.
So she's a really good option, that Primal Trust program. And then if people want to do more like practitioner guided, I do neuro-emotional technique. And this
Mm.
really works on the subconscious because we live a lot of our day through our subconscious thoughts, right? This is where we're going to store our memories and our emotions, and you can act through that. And so NET really it utilizes muscle testing as well, and you really work on clearing any blockages going back, from childhood, early teens, whatever it may be, to really work on clearing that grief or that anger or shame or whatever it may be. So primal trust in NET. We also do give people like free vagus nerve exercises. A lot of people do like that vagus nerve stimulator. There's certain like gazing exercises. Binaural
Mm.
beats is something that you can look up on YouTube, and that will play songs at a specific frequency to help calm that nervous system down. So lots of different techniques. I really like ones that are going to get into that subconscious, but with emotional work, like feel what resonates with you, feel what practitioner resonates with you.
Yes.
Not everyone's meant to work together, so finding someone that you really feel comfortable and safe with is really important.
And I think you also bring another point, which is like, if you're on this journey, you're going to need more than one guide.
Hmm.
They can come to you for some things, and they might go to someone who's great at hormones, and then they might go to someone who's
Hmm.
great with their emotions. And that's important because I think as you go into this journey, you find one guide and they can't fix you totally. And I think, you know, there should be an understanding on the patient side. You're going to need more than one, like, there's no one-stop shop.
Right,
And
right.
then also as providers, I think you do a really good job. Like, go get this and go get this and go get this, and I will do this.
Hmm.
Because it's going to come from a lot of places. And that's true even in conventional medicine, right? Like, you have your primary, then you have your gynecologist, and you
Yeah.
go somewhere else for a mammogram, and you go like, so using more than one modality is really important because there's a lot of things happening at the same time.
Oh,
And one is
absolutely.
spilling over into the other.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm always referring to like PT or like go get adjusted or acupuncture, right? Like just getting those different modalities in there is so beneficial. And like you said, I think that's a really good point that, having different people on your team that are working together is really key for that.
Yeah, it's really key for that. I love that. So how can people work with you?
So I am working part-time at Redefining Wellness Center, Dr. Jabin Moore's clinic, and then I'm going to be opening up my own clinic in person. It's going to be called Elevate Chiropractic. It's going to be in Natick, Massachusetts. I'm hoping it will be kind of beginning of April, end of March timeframe. I'm just waiting
Ooh.
for the room to get ready. So yeah, I'm super excited. I love working in person. I love doing all like the structural work and the emotional and the chemical work. So I'll be at two different places. So Dr. Jabin's and then in Natick, Mass.
I am so excited for you that you're branching on
Yes.
your own. Is this your first time?
Yes. Yep. So I've worked at two other clinics, and they're great clinics. They do such a phenomenal job, and I've learned so much at both. And so if you're a student or you're aspiring to be in this alternative space, work at a lot of different clinics, see what you
Yes.
like, see what you don't like, and then you can kind of make your own. So yes, it's gonna be my first time on my own. I'm super excited about it.
Are you also terrified?
Yes, and
Good.
that's just
Perfect.
part of it.
It
And,
is.
it's just like, just see what happens. It's not supposed to be perfect. You're gonna figure the kinks out
100%.
along the way. And
100%. I just wanted to let you know, I'm sure you know this, but if you're terrified, you're perfect and you're in the right place. I've had I have a few of my own personal adventures. It's terrifying each and every time and also exhilarating. And yeah,
yes.
nobody knows what they're doing. We always figure it out. So I'm so excited for you for that. That is so wonderful that you're like fully expressed in your career. Whatever that ends up looking like is going to be perfect.
Oh, I so appreciate those words. I definitely need it.
Okay, yeah, no, in those moments, I know I'm excited for you. Seeing another woman opening up her own business is really important.
Mhm.
Like, I'm just super excited for you. Like, check, check, check. Go ahead
Yeah.
with this. I love this. I love this. Oh my God, that is so exciting. I'm really excited for you. Dr. Kate, is there anything else you want to tell our mutual audience that maybe I forgot to ask you?
I think that when you're on your healing journey and you're feeling frustrated, make sure that you're working with a practitioner who's really listening to you and is willing to think outside the box and is willing to run whatever tests you want run and who doesn't question you, right? You should feel like your practitioner is on your team and is willing to do the extra work, look into that research study and really feel like you're working with the right person. So definitely there's tons of great practitioners out there. And so just make sure that you're feeling heard. And that again, if you feel stuck, look at that emotional work because that's really important. And just know that your body, you and your body, you guys are one, right? Your body is not fighting against you. Your body is not your enemy. You guys, your
Mm,
body is doing the best that it can. So doing some daily gratitude toward your physical body of like, thank you to all of my organs, thank you to all of my physical parts for doing the best that it can and for waking up another day and fighting through. So
mm.
gratitude towards the physical body just daily can be really helpful.
Oh my God, you said two really important things. And I think the first one also about your providers is sometimes you also outgrow a provider. Like
Yeah,
they were
yeah,
really great at first. And when it's not great anymore, it doesn't mean that like you got really far with this provider. You're better than you were
yes,
6 months ago. And then they did what they could, and that was your time together.
yeah,
And if that's the case and you've plateaued, you can go on to another provider, but don't second guess
yes,
that time you spent with that provider. You've learned something, something's shifted.
yes,
And it's
absolutely.
very rare that you have someone that you're going to work with you for the next. Everyone has their areas, especially, and your body's changing and your needs are changing.
Mhm.
And so that's a good evolution. And the other thing that I really like, because I practice daily gratitude, but I don't think I thank my body. Like I'm really
Mm.
grateful for like having running water and like a
Yeah, yeah,
flushing
yeah.
toilet, and I'm really grateful for the roof over my head. But I don't think that I'm grateful enough for everything that does work in my body. And I think I'm going to
Right.
adopt that. So thank you so much for that because that's really good. That was really centering. Thank you. That was so good.
Yeah. Yeah, I always end like my NET sessions with like hand over the heart, just going through, thanking all the different organs, acknowledging what they do. And yeah, just it feels great,
So
to be like,
good.
what? My body's actually doing a pretty good job.
Yeah, because we're always focused on the knee pain or the headache. We're not focused
Hmm.
on the shoulder's not hurting and your elbow's not
Yeah.
hurting and kidney's doing a pretty damn good job. You just drink that water.
Yeah.
And like so much more is working than isn't, but we're focusing on the pain points. So that is so helpful. Oh my God, that was so strong. I'm so glad you brought that to the surface.
Good.
That was so good. Dr. Kate Masterson, what a pleasure and honor. Thank you for you taught me so much today, and I'm sure you taught my audience so much. And I hope that anyone in Massachusetts goes to you and that you thrive and you flourish because you're doing so much for this world. Thank you for being here.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having this platform, getting all this great education out. You've had amazing people on the podcast. So keep doing all the great work that you're doing. This is exactly what we need.
Thank you. That's so kind. Thank you. Thank you for tuning in to the Medical Disruptor. If today's conversation resonated with you and you want to dig deeper, my book is the perfect place to start, or you can listen to any of my free videos. Just go to my website, drafratlamandre.com. If you're interested in working with me one-on-one, there is a waiting list. It's there also. If you're a nurse practitioner looking for courses to level up your clinical confidence, visit my other website, egprep.com. No matter where you are, don't forget to subscribe, share this episode, and leave a review. It helps us reach more disruptors like you. Until next time, keep questioning, keep learning, and keep disrupting.